Hey, what is going on guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at how to beat the most OP champions in patch 7.6. So the champions that I'm going to talk about in this video are going to be the champions that are the most banned right now in solo queue. So I thought that if the champion is most banned, then it most likely means people think that they're pretty strong or they're pretty OP right now. So those are the ones that I'm going to be going over in this video. But with that being said, let's get started. Now the first champion we're going to be taking a look at in this video has a 48% ban rate in this patch, and it's Galio. Now we're mainly going to be taking a look at Galio in the top lane here. He's most picked in the top lane right now, so I think it's best to go over that role, and then I'll also give some tips on like how to beat him for other roles as well. But for the top lane in this patch, two champions that are doing really well against Galio are Fiora and Yasuo. So the main reason to why both of these champions do pretty well against Galio is they can very easily dodge his Q damage. His Q damage, or your Q damage as Galio, you need to be able to like hit that if you're gonna want to do any damage at all in the laning phase. And because Yasuo has his dash, Fiora also has her Q which she can use to dash, it is harder to hit that with Galio in the laning phase. Now Fiora can also do a really good job against him, because if Galio wants to go in for the stun or whatever his E does, Fiora can easily just W that, because Galio's E, it does have a wind up on it, and therefore it's very easy for Fiora to react with that, and she can just turn on him. Her W will end up stunning the Galio, and then she's gonna get a very free trade-off because of that. So these two champions I would look to pick for sure against him. And then a few other champions that are doing pretty good right now are Olaf and Darius. I think mainly just because these champions can basically just out damage him in the laning phase. Darius has a super strong early game. Olaf also does have a very strong early game, and once both of these two champions hit level 6, it's very hard for the Galio to beat them. If Galio tries to all in the Darius, then he's just gonna get the auto stacks off and get the true damage ult. And then Olaf at level 6, he can completely just not get hit by any of the Galio crowd control. So the Galio is really not gonna be able to set up his Q for much damage at all, and he's just gonna probably die to the Olaf at level 6. Now, a few champions from other lanes that you can use to beat Galio are something like Janna, Lulu, and Nivea. The main weakness that Galio has is that once you get in as Galio and once you use like all your CC abilities, you're pretty useless, because all of your abilities are on fairly long cooldowns, at least your CC abilities are. So once you use all your CC, you're kind of just sitting there and you can't really get to the back line if the enemy team does have good peel. So if you play someone like a Janna or like an Nivea who has got good zone control, then you can do a really good job against Galio and just keeping him out and away from your back line in team fights. The next champion we're going to take a look at here is another top laner, and she does have a little bit of a lower ban rate than Galio at 31%, but that's still pretty high, and it's Camille. So Camille, she's still a great top lane pick if you can play her well. Her snowball potential is insanely good, and her mobility is just pretty much unmatched by any other champion. Ways that you can beat Camille in the laning phase though are playing a strong early game top laner, or just a champion that can do well in the matchup against her. So for example, Akali has a 59% win rate against Camille, and the main reason to why Akali does so well against her is because whenever Camille goes in for like a hook shot, or when she goes in and uses her Q, Akali can put down her W, and she can put that down when Camille's Q is about to give her the true damage proc, and therefore you can just wait that out once she does use her Q, and then after that, when you're playing Akali, you can go back in on the Camille, and you pretty much just get free trades off by doing that. The way you win this matchup is just play around your W as Akali. Whenever it's up, you win the trade every single time, so it's a pretty easy matchup if you're an experienced Akali player. And then a few other champions here that are doing great against her in this patch are a lot of lane bully top lane champions, or champions that can just out sustain the Camille. So these include like Renekton, Pantheon, Tryndamere, Jax. Renekton and Pantheon, great lane bully top laners. Camille cannot match them in the laning phase. Tryndamere, he can just out sustain Camille's damage. If Camille tries to all in Tryndamere at level 6, then he's just gonna turn on the Camille, and there's not really much the Camille can do in that matchup. matchup unless she does get an early gank and get a good snowball going. And then for Jax, you do have your dodge as Jax, so as long as you can use that properly and in the right situations, you can really outplay the Camille and get some very free trades off. Next up, we're going to take a look at a jungle pick, and it's going to be Graves. So right now, Graves, he's got a 38% ban rate in this patch. He's the most banned jungler right now. So how you can beat Graves right now, I don't really think there's any jungler that can beat him in the early game. If you're going up against a good Graves player, then he's pretty much going to beat you like in the early game every single time, unless you do end up getting a counter gank off or you end up getting a cheesy invade off on him. The ways you can beat him like outside of the early game and once you start team fighting is by playing a good like long range lockdown champion, or a champion that just outranges him, so that whenever Graves does try to like dash in a team fight, or whenever he tries to get in there to deal damage, you can just, for example, like Syndra stun him, you can Zyra root him and Nivea alt Q him. Or a good pick against him, or a champion that's actually doing pretty good in this patch, is Fiddlesticks. The reason to why Fiddle does pretty good against Graves once you do get later on into the game is because if Graves tries to dash in for like a full combo, then you can just fear him as Fiddle. It's a point and click ability. It's a 2.25 second fear as Fiddlesticks. So if Graves does go too aggressive, then you just throw that on him and your team should be able to burst him down pretty easily. So as long as you do draft a decent long-range CC champion that can deal with Graves in teamfights and that can punish him if he does try to get too close, then you should do pretty well in most situations. You don't want to draft like a full melee composition, or like a composition that doesn't have that good long-range CC ability, because if you don't, then it's just super easy for Graves to pop off in teamfights. He can get right up in your face and there's not much you can do against him. And then the final three champions that we're going to take a look at in this video are going to be assassin champions, and I'm going to talk about them all at once because the ways you beat these champions and how you counter them is pretty much the same for all three of them. Now these champions are going to include Katarina, Zed, and Talon, and right now in this patch, Zed has a 47% ban rate, Talon has a 22% ban rate, and then Katarina is actually the most banned champion in this patch across all regions with a 52% ban rate. Now the first champion here that is doing really well against all three of them in this patch is Ahri. Now the main reason to why Ahri does well against these assassins is because number one, she does have her ultimate, so it's very hard for those assassins to like stick onto Ahri and to deal enough damage to burst her down. And then number two, she does have her charm, so Talon and Zed as well as Katarina, whenever they try to engage on you, they're going to be coming at you a lot of the time in a straight line. Talon especially, when Talon jumps in with his Q, he's coming straight at you. So with Ahri, as long as you can play it correctly, it's a very easy charm to hit a lot of the time. And if you can hit that charm on the Talon, especially since like Edge of Night, it really isn't a bot item anymore, or at least on Talon and Zed, it's not the most optimal item choice since it did get nerfed. So if you can just hit that charm as Ahri, then you're going to do great in those matchups. And you also do have your ultimate, so that even if you do miss your charm and they jump on you, you will be able to escape them. To beat Talon in the laning phase, you can pull out some cheese and you can play Pantheon mid. Pantheon mid actually does super well against Talon. You can outpoke him in the laning phase. If he tries to jump on you and if he goes for like the Q on you, I'm pretty sure that Pantheon's passive blocks Talon's Q damage. Don't quote me on that, but if it does, like Pantheon can just deny a load of Talon's damage in the laning phase, and if it doesn't, Pantheon can still do great in that matchup because he just pokes the Talon down. And if the Talon does try to like engage on him and Talon's half HP and the Pantheon's running the ignite, then Talon's probably just gonna die. The Pantheon can just one-shot him. So I think that's a great matchup if you do want to like play a hard counter to Talon. And then a few more obvious counters to these champions are like Malzahar, Annie, Kale, Zilean. I think Malz and Annie are great picks against any one of these champions because it just basically forces them to build an early QSS, especially like if you're playing Malz or Annie. If you don't go a QSS against those champions, then you're just gonna die in team fights every single time, as long as the Malz and the Annie are smart and they do use their crowd control on you when you do try to jump in. For Kale and Zilean, they're more like soft counters because in the laning phase, you can definitely destroy a Kale or a Zilean if you are playing a Talon or a Katarina. A little less so with Zed because Zed doesn't have like the strongest early game compared to Talon or Cat, but post level 6, if you're playing Kale or Zilean, you've got your ultimates, and your ultimates just do a really good job at countering assassins. Whoever they jump on in a team fight to try to burst down, then you just throw your ultimate on that champion, and it makes the assassin champions pretty useless once you get later on into the game. And then some other general ways that you can beat these assassin champions is make sure that at least someone on your team is taking exhaust. Ignite meta has started to come back a little bit after exhaust did get nerfed, but exhaust is still very strong against assassins because it reduces 40% of their damage still, which is very good. And then some other general ways to beat these assassin champions and to increase your chances of winning against them is make sure you do take at least one exhaust on your team. I'm seeing a lot of like no exhaust team comps lately against assassins, and it just allows the assassin champions to do whatever they want basically. You do want to have an exhaust against them. I know it did get nerfed, but it still reduces 40% of that assassin's damage, which is an insane amount in a mid to late game team fight. So whether like the support takes it or the mid laner takes it, I think it's good to have at least one exhaust if you are against an assassin. And then if you are a support main, I would look to be picking Lulu every single time the enemy does have an assassin type champion. If Lulu is not banned in this patch, which she is actually banned quite a bit right now, then I would look to pick her up for sure. If the assassin champion does try to dive in onto the back line, you just use your polymorph on them and it should allow your team to burst them down before they can even get out of the polymorph a lot of the time. If somehow like the assassin ends up getting out of your polymorph though and onto your AD carry, then you can just throw your ultimate on your AD carry, throw your shield, and it's just so hard for assassins to beat a good Lulu player. So that is going to be all for this video, guys. If you did enjoy, then please be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you have yet to already. So thanks for watching, have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.